Hi guys, welcome to Ask the Doc, where today we dissect and understand the effects of night shifts. It's beautiful that the light just dimmed when I said night shifts and its effects on the body. Stay tuned. Now, before we dive into this big topic, I just want to kind of outline to you guys a rough outline on what I'm going to try to achieve here so that you have a good understanding. So the big thing that we're going to talk about is some statistics on how night shifts affect the body. We're going to look at some scary studies showing some graphs that impact teens, specifically alcohol consumption and suicide rates. Focus on the concept of sleep debt, what that means, which is almost as bad as your financial debt. Look at a couple of studies to support sleep debt and the consequences and the effects of the body. Then we'll focus on what the concept of circadian rhythms are, how they play with the body, what the concept is essentially, and then look into other topics such as shift work disorder. It's actually a condition that we need to focus on, and the Cleveland Clinic actually talks about this in a pretty good summary if you want to go on clevelandclinic.org. The medications that you can use to help with this condition, not so great, but there are other methods to improving the sleep shift disorder. And then just some quick general tips on how to improve your sleep and then eventually improve your health. Let's dive in. Boom. The reason I'm talking about night shifts on how it affects the body is why? Because I do night shifts. So out of my general curiosity of understanding how this is going to affect me, I figured I'd make a video and help anybody else out there that's wondering how it's going to affect them. So let me hit you up with a couple of stats before I jump into this video so that you understand the prevalence and the importance of why I'm doing this topic in the first place. About 15% of the US population, or at least the working force, which is about a third of about 320 million people, do the fuzzy math, actually works night shifts. And that's usually a mid-shift, if you know what mid-shifts are, or night shifts, which are roughly the 7 p to 7 a.m. shift. And that's affecting firefighters, police officers, medical personnel, etc. So it is on the rise and it's affecting more people. That equates to about roughly 13 million, 14 million people or so that are dealing with the same issues that maybe you are dealing with, but personally I'm dealing with. Now, night shifts, or essentially sleep deprivation, has been impacting Americans in a bad way, specifically on the freeway. Now, I'm from California. We use the freeways a lot, so this is a very concerning statistic. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration in 2013 did a poll, and they found out that about 72,000 car crashes were because of drowsy drivers, and that led to about 44,000 injuries and sadly 800 fatalities just because of sleep deprivation. Now, if we fast forward it now, the death toll is about 6,000 deaths a year because of sleep deprivation. This is not a problem that is going away, and it's getting worse because U.S. employees, U.S. employers, everyone's trying to run and get better and better and better and better at the sake of basically sacrificing their bodies and sacrificing their sleep. It's a sad reality, but we got to live with it. And if you are one of those lucky ones that can switch their career from nights to days, by all means do it. You're going to have a better lifestyle. But if you're like me and the rest of the 14 million people, let's learn about it so that we can get better and live with this reality so that we don't impact our bodies in a negative way. So I want to bring a topic up that's pretty essential, which is called sleep debt. debt, like your student loan debt, an ever-rising issue. But sleep debt is the concept that you're supposed to get roughly about 8 to 9 hours of sleep every day. Now, say you don't get those, let's just round it, 9 hours a day, and you get 1 hour missing every day. That leads to essentially 7 hours of sleep debt per week. Now, if you do that for 4 weeks, 7 times 4, 28, that's roughly 30 hours of sleep debt. And now if you extend it over 1 year, you're looking at almost over 300 hours of sleep debt. Now, that concept is very critical on how you get restorative sleep, how your REM sleep gets impacted, how your circadian rhythm gets impacted. Basically, the hormonal body, the infrastructure of your body, which is regulated by ups and downs of hormones, gets impacted because of this sleep debt. So if you're in financial debt, you know how shitty that is, and especially how hard it is to climb out of that hole. But when you're in sleep debt and you still have to work and you still have to perform at such a high level, it's gonna be hard to recover those hours. So I'll talk about strategies on how you can recover those hours, especially by taking frequent breaks and adjusting your sleep patterns and your sleep cycles to reclaim that sleep debt. So just remember the concept, sleep debt. Now, I don't know about you guys or my viewers out there, but if you do love having sex, you need to get some sleep. A poll that I came across showed that about a third of the partners actually avoided sex because of sleep deprivation. So if you want your partner to engage into having more of a healthier sex life, the trick is give them more sleep. All right, so a pretty important study that I came across specifically for the women out there is out of the International Journal of Cancer. They looked at 1,200 women from a time period from 2005 to 2008, and they saw that the rate of breast cancer increased almost 30%. That is ridiculously high. And this was for women that worked a total duration of 4 years of night shift and 3 night shifts of week. That's a lot of nurses that I deal with on a regular that are working that routine. Usually it's 3 to 4 nights. So if you're a woman out there and you're doing a lot of nights, you got to be on top of the concept that your rate of breast cancer actually increases. Now, obviously, you should take a lot more concern if you have breast cancer that runs in the family, or specifically if you are a BRCA1 or BRCA2 genetic gene carrier for breast cancer, you're at an even higher risk. Now, another study I came across is from the British Medical Journal, and what they found in 2012 is the risk of heart disease actually increases almost 7% for people that are essentially doing night shifts. The reasons and the technicalities of why that is still to be determined, but they feel that by impacting the circadian rhythm, which essentially regulates cortisol, the cortisol state should be going down in the deeper parts of the night. So roughly around 12 o'clock, 1 a.m., 2 a.m., that cortisol level actually goes down or very close to zero. Now that allows the body to be in this resting, restorative state, and it lowers your heart rate, allows the heart to essentially relax. But when you're doing night shifts, you mess up the circadian rhythm that the cortisol level is actually not low enough. It's actually not suppressed, and it still is impacting the heart, causing increased blood pressure and putting stress on the heart. That's the technical reason on why they think this way. But yeah, essentially, if you have heart disease, you probably shouldn't be doing night shifts because your risk will increase by 7% just because of the type of work you're doing. Pretty scary, guys. So another study that came out is basically examining flight attendants from daytime versus nighttime, and the outcome was looking at complications in pregnancy. And what they found out was the night female flight attendants were twice as likely to have miscarriages, have conditions like endometriosis, irregular periods, or essentially more painful periods, or complications during pregnancy, such as low birth weight. So factor went up double just because of night shifts. All right, so what I was promising is to show you a graph that's actually pretty important and will make me more aware when my kids become teenagers. Right now, my kid is just turning 3, and I have a daughter that is currently 6 months old. So I have some time, but I'm definitely going to be thinking about this, specifically how our teens are getting lack of sleep. So this next graph shows and highlights essentially the important points that I want to show and discuss. And this is from the American Safety Council. When teenagers are sleep deprived, it's been shown that they're 75% more likely to carry a weapon. Could explain why we're having a lot of mass murders, like almost on a every weekly basis. Are these teens getting enough sleep? Could be affecting it. Another one that I like to address is suicide. And then that also could be linked with depression, and that is 55% of people in their teenage years. So every teen that you see on the street, 1 of 2 has contemplated killing themselves. That is ridiculous. And I could do a total different video on teenage suicide, but yes, it is on the rise, sadly, and we're losing a lot of young, healthy individual minds because of conformity or lack of fitting in, etc. And it could be just because of a simple thing like sleep deprivation. I bring this graph up because there's a lot of things that we need to educate our politicians about. It's basically sleep cycles, how schools are ran. Should we be doing 0 hours? Should we be putting our kids through academic hell at the sake of sacrificing their sleep? A big push in California is now online school, essentially online education from home. And this may be a factor, or at least something I'm going to be actively looking at when my kids start going into school formally. Specifically if their sleep is getting impacted, they're more grouchy, they're more irritable. There's no point to be waking up at 7 a.m. to shotgun food in your mouth just to make it to school at 8, and then you're groggy for the first 3 hours. How are you comprehending anything that your teacher is educating you about? It's just wasted time and effort. Now do that every day for the whole school year. Essentially a third of your time at school is useless. Doesn't make sense. We can make our teenagers a lot more productive going further down the road, especially that I'm bringing out this study. And I'm sure the whole world knows about this study because it was a very important teenage polling, which was quite eye-opener. And the last two that I found very important is binge drinking, up 70%. That is ridiculous. Again, I'm sorry I use the word ridiculous so damn much, because all this research that I've been doing about sleep deprivation is very eye-shocking to me, because we don't get educated as physicians on sleep deprivation or the effects on the body. We just learn a variety of things. And now that I'm diving deeper and deeper into this, it's very eye-opening. So kids are binge drinking 70%, and indirectly, obesity is on the rise. Because you're impacting the circadian rhythm, those hormones such as growth hormone, insulin resistance hormones, or insulin in itself are being impacted, that even if you're eating a healthy, clean diet, you have a high chance of still becoming obese. It's very, very interesting because all this stems because of sleep deprivation. Now, I know there's probably external factors, and you guys are saying, well, it's not all because of sleep, it's because of social dynamics, etc., poverty, blah, blah, blah. But this also could be a very easy fix to helping a lot of teenage youth. So I want to bring up this interesting study that actually came out from the OSHA website, which deals with risk to employees while working, and essentially the quality of the environment that they're working in. And it talks about fatigue versus alcohol, and how chronic fatigue could mimic the effects of someone being under the influence of alcohol. So after essentially 4 hours of just sleep, that is equivalent to 0.106% blood alcohol, which is drinking about 6 beers. And that's pretty scary, especially if you're working in the industrial area, like a longshoreman or a truck driver, or working with heavy machinery. You're at a very high risk of increasing accidents to yourself or your colleagues. Now, I did mention in a previous video that the cost of industrial accidents and the reduction of productivity is actually on the rise. Like everything else I'm talking about is on the rise, sadly. But the last figure that I came across was $450 billion of money or productivity was lost because of industrial related issues from sleep deprivation. So pretty scary that just a little bit of sleep deprivation or lack of sleep is almost equivalent to you drinking 6 beers a day. Now, during night shifts, I admitted previously when I had a brand new baby, I was getting roughly about 3 to 5 hours of sleep a day. So essentially I could be technically doing my job in a pseudo alcohol buzz-like state. Now, I've understand this concept and have now improved my sleep by sleeping before I start my night shift, and then when I come off my night shift, I take another break. So I'm improving the sleep debt gap and also getting more restorative sleep by breaking these sleep cycles, because I'm not, or at least I don't have the luxury of sleeping 8 to 9 hours straight. So once again, keep in mind that just a little sleep impact can almost equivalent to being influenced by 6 beers just by getting 4 hours of sleep only. All right, now that I scared you about all the statistics that impact you essentially socially or productivity wise, how does it impact your body? So the big thing that they've studied is essentially this binge eating process that night shift workers do, and essentially they're consuming a lot more calories than their day counterparts, is because the impact of the hormone called leptin. So leptin, when it's high, essentially makes you more full. And leptin is a hormone secreted out of fat tissue, and it gives you that satiety feeling. So in day shift workers, their leptin levels are higher. Night shift workers, their leptin levels are lower, which is the reason why we probably are binging or consuming a lot more calories. Another risk is increase in obesity and diabetes. Like I mentioned, the circadian rhythm and the fluctuation of your insulin, your growth hormones are impacted, that even if you're eating a healthy diet, you can still be obese. And because of that cortisol level being high, you're in a higher state of stress, or at least hormonal stress, that you will not shed fat or have improved fat metabolism. So that's a very big thing if you're actively trying to lose weight. You got to get sleep. You got to improve your work situation for that fat to come off. Next thing is, because of stress, because of high acidity in the body, specifically if you're snacking during the night, you can be more prone to peptic ulcer disease or stomach erosions or stomach gastritis or irritable bowel. So the GI tract becomes impacted because there should be a resting period for your gut. Now, and that resting period should be at nighttime. But if you're eating donuts and cookies and pizza and all this other crap, plus you're in the state of stress, it's going to impact your gut. The other one is melatonin suppression. As we work nights, our melatonin level starts to get impacted. Melatonin is a natural hormone, which at a higher level, it causes our body to initiate or go into sleep. So that's why you have a bunch of melatonin tablets sold at CVS and Rite Aid. You pop that in, you can help initiate sleep. But you should be able to do this naturally. So that hormone starts getting impacted with night shift works. So you later get anxiety because of lack of sleep and depression. I have a video already talking to you about how those factors get impacted because of sleep. And I did mention that depression is up 10 times X in the state of sleep deprivation, and anxiety can be up almost 17 times because of sleep deprivation. And another concept is vitamin D deficiency, right? You're not out in the sun. So vitamin D deficiency is now seen more in sleep or shift workers. And vitamin D deficiency is also linked with depression, increasing your risk of breast cancer, prostate cancer, colon cancer, and heart disease. So the rule of thumb is, if you're working nights, on your off days, you should actively try to get outside and sit, read a book, enjoy an ocean view, so that you can get that restorative vitamin D naturally back into your body, rather than popping pills of vitamin D supplements. All right, so I keep on mentioning what the circadian rhythm is, and I just want to elaborate and break that down for you a little bit. So the circadian rhythm is the natural cycle your body goes through in a 24-hour period. Now, hormones are timed based on certain hours of the day to spike up and then eventually down. And the way the circadian rhythm is modified, or I guess kept regular, is because the light enters your eye, and the light is a stimulus to certain cells in your brain to activate this type of internal clock. And whenever the light goes away, it turns off the signals, and then that either upregulates or downregulates hormones. And those hormones can be thyroid hormone, cortisol, insulin growth factor, etc., but they're all essentially turned on and off based on the stimulus that goes through your eyes. And essentially the light or lack of light regulates and downregulates these hormones. So here's a simplified version of the circadian rhythm. So imagine you're waking up around 6 o'clock, sunrise, and at this time your blood pressure will be having an increase. Makes sense. You're starting the day, you need to ramp up your blood pressure so all the organs have good oxygenation. Now melatonin starts to reduce because we're not trying to go back to sleep. We're trying to wake up, get into a more awakened state. Around noontime, you got improvement in coordination, alertness, and then as the afternoon starts approaching, you have a faster reaction time. That's pretty interesting, but I'll go into further detail later down the road why that is. And then around sunset, the body should be slowing down. Your eyes are taking the visual cues that the sun is going down, and your blood pressure is probably high at this time, and your temperature is at high. It's like the body is trying to set you in a good state before this long sleep period. Now, the melatonin level will eventually start rising. The cortisol level will start going down during your deepest sleep. And then you'll have REM sleep, which is this consolidative, restorative period. And all this is basically modulated based on your visual cues of the sun. So you can see that sleep or shift work will impact this because you're not getting that visual stimulation of light. So there is a theory or a way you can modulate your circadian rhythm by exposing yourself to artificial light. And for shift workers, exposing yourself to light during, say, the 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. period. And then when you go home, sleep in a very black, dark room. And now keeping this type of schedule will essentially give your body a good, healthy circadian rhythm. Not the best, but it's better than what you were dealing with initially. Okay, let's transition to a new topic. It's called shift work disorder. Now, if you go on the Cleveland Clinic website or clevelandclinic.org, they do a great review on shift work disorder and what it is, tips to improve this condition, and maybe some medications that can also help with this condition. So what is shift work disorder? So anytime someone says a disorder, it's like, oh my God, there's some like illness or anything, but it's not. It's a more of a product of your work environment leading to a bad health outcome. And the big thing is you're experiencing sleepiness, fatigue, your productivity at work goes down, and the big thing is you're also falling asleep when you're not at work. And people are starting to notice that, or you're having episodes of falling asleep during mid-conversation, specifically, say at parties or birthday events. And the work lifestyle is now impacting your performance when you're off work. So that is the concept of shift work disorder. And we'll jump in on tips and how to improve this condition. Okay, so how do you improve the condition shift work disorder if your physician diagnoses with you this or we're suspecting it? So a big tip that I like to do is that because I'm not able to get those 8 to 9 hours of sleep that is recommended, is I like to break up that sleep. So before I go to work, I usually take about a 3 or 4 hour nap before I enter the shift. And because I start my work at 7 p.m., I usually take a nap from, say, 2 p.m. to about 6, and then get ready, and then I'm at work at 7. And then when I come off my shift, I usually go to sleep from, say, 9:30, 10:30 a.m. and I wake up roughly around 2 p.m. So I've noticed my performance has improved, even though I'm not getting a full 8 to 9 hours sleep. I am improving my sleep depth or reducing that gap, and I'm feeling more rested. The other tip that I like to do is I like to sleep in dark, quiet, and that's also to make my circadian rhythm more regular. Because remember, hormones are upregulated and downregulated by the light that enters your eyes. So if we try to simulate that we're going to sleep, it should be nighttime. We need to shut down the stimulus so that those hormones can be regulated more properly. Now, another tip that has been very important is I've limited my caffeine use. Now, caffeine has a half-life of about 4 hours, so you could do the math whenever you took that dose of coffee, and you can see how long it's still going to remain in your system. So for me, what I've done is I've still drink coffee, otherwise I'm going to have rebound headaches and migraines, but I usually drink my coffee around 7 p.m., which is the start of my shift where I need to be the most alert. But I used to drink a coffee at the end of my shift, but then it was very hard to go to sleep. But I did that so that I would stay alert when I was driving from work to home. As I just mentioned, there's about 6,000 fatalities because of sleep deprivation on our US roads. So that was my thought process. But what I do now is I avoid that morning coffee, and I just replace it with a good hearty breakfast. And that, and the calories and the carbohydrates in itself, is enough to get my body at least revved up for, say, a 30-40 minute process if I need to drive out to the house. Now, thankfully, I only live about 12 miles away. So it's a little bit easier on me, but for some of you folks that are 2 hours out, if you really have to do it, another tip is a 20-minute restorative nap. Take a nap in the car, in the parking lot, get refreshed, get a good breakfast in you. Avoid that caffeine in the morning, because what you're trying to do is initiate the body to kind of slow down so that you have that sleep right after your shift. So another tip that I am gonna try is, and it might be a pretty cool video too, is light therapy. I just need to buy it. Now, most of these light therapies that you can get on Amazon are about $30 to $60. But the recommended is to get light therapy from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. Now, I don't know if everyone has that ability to just sit in front of a light, but I think also installing, like, say, an LED light at a computer monitoring station when, say, the hospital purposely turns the lights down for patients to rest, that can be used as light therapy when we're charting and typing during the end of our shift before handouts and sign-outs. So the goal and the recommendation is to get that light therapy from 3 a.m. to 7 a.m. I'll let you know if I start this journey and see how I feel doing this, but the literature shows that it can be beneficial. Now, usually the way I practice is I try to avoid a lot of medications. I like to try to do dietary modifications, lifestyle modifications to improve your health. But if we can't alter that quick enough or fast enough, then we can go to some medications. I practice internal medicine, which is the art of prescribing medications and learning that. So I'll give you a few medications to also help with this. So the first one is called Provigil. I don't know if you guys have ever heard about it. It's spelled Provigil. And what this drug does is it acts like a stimulant, like amphetamine, speed, cocaine, but it doesn't have the addictive property, and it works indirectly rather than on a certain specific hormone, like increasing dopamine. What it does is it upregulates neurotransmitter function, dopamine, GABA, histamine, glutamate. All of this kind of gets upregulated to increase alertness. Now, another drug on the market is also called Nuvigil. It's Nuvigil, and it has the same effect to kind of upregulate you, increase your awareness, memory retention. But my opinion on this is I rather modify your lifestyle, your sleep habits, your caffeine intake, and the amount of exercise that you're doing rather than just giving you a medication to try to fix this. At the end of the day, medications are good, but they're not the answer, especially if you're trying to fix something for a long duration. They're only good for the short time, and eventually the effect gets lesser and lesser. Okay, so the next little segment, I guess, is basically some quick tips on how to improve your sleep hygiene. And indirectly, by doing this, you're going to improve the shift work disorder that you may be experiencing by doing a long stretch of night shifts for years. So the first thing that you need to do is invest in some blackout curtains. There's no point in sleeping when there's light coming through your window because, again, the light hits your brain, activates the signals, initiates the circadian rhythm, and this circadian rhythm may not be in tune to what you're trying to do. And they'll be fighting each other. Essentially, the hormones will be fighting each other and keeping you in a more up state, which is not what you want to do. So get the blackout curtains, make your sleeping situation like a deep dungeon. The other thing is I like to do is turn off electronics at least 2 hours before I try to go to sleep. There's no point in having you playing on phones and try to stimulating your mind, playing video games, checking your Facebook, all that stuff. Just throw it to the side, plug it, charge it downstairs and sleep upstairs. Just get it out of your room. The same thing with TV. TV should be off. It should not be on because you don't want to stimulate your brain. You know, TV is casting a light. The light is hitting. It's making your body more stimulated. You want to try to reduce as much stimulation as possible. I've also bought a really nice white noise machine that's to cancel out all the indirect noise that my family's making, especially the kids, the toddler running around, the wife trying to cook. You don't need to be in tune with all those like little distractions, I guess, that will impact your sleep. And then if you can't, you could wear earplugs or noise cancellation headphones. Those are always a plus. But really, you're trying to avoid things that can easily distract your brain and keep you in an alert state. Again, the caffeine, you got to eliminate that. You don't want to stimulate yourself when you're trying to initiate sleep. So I try to avoid caffeine in the later part of my shift so that it doesn't have an effect on me when I'm trying to initiate sleep around, say, 9:30, 10 a.m. And lastly, alcohol. You got to avoid that. Initially, alcohol is good to get you to go to sleep or make you more tired, but the long-term effects is it starts affecting your sleep, initiation of sleep, the quality of sleep. And the big thing that alcohol does is it reduces your REM sleep, which is your rapid eye movement sleep. And the REM sleep is a very important stage in sleep, and it's a very small window in which you get that restorative health from sleep, which is like the immune system gets improved, you rebuild any kind of trauma or inflammation in the body, and you don't want to impact that with alcohol use. Now, guys, if you made it to the end of this video, much props. I hope you got a lot of education out of it. And this is probably one of my longest videos, about 30 minutes or so. But I did have a lot to talk about. It was all pretty necessary. And it was basically the information I have learned for myself and how to improve my own, I guess, madness, insanity through the night shift work and my struggles through this night shift sleeping disorder, and juggling basically my job with kids. And I hope you got a lot out of it. Next video is coming soon. I always post usually around Fridays after 6 p.m. If you enjoy the content, click subscribe, give me a thumbs up, and support the channel. And if you have a specific topic you want me to talk about, or your own personal health issue, comment below. I'll make a video, or I'll personally text you. My goal is to be an online resource for my community and help them cipher through the bullshit and the crap that's on the internet and give you the truth and my perspective, my opinions. Once again, I've been doing this for about 8 years, and I want to serve you and be informative for you, and for no cost. I want to keep this channel very clean and not monetary. My goal is to just give back to the community, and I think the biggest and best and easiest way to do it is by making videos online. So if you like the content, support me and subscribe. And my goal is to be your doc, or specifically your online doc, and give you good quality advice so that you can improve your health. Thank you again. This is Ask the Doc. This is Dr. Sorella, and see you next time.